Boom, and we're live. Welcome to my first video. All right, so today I want to talk about something called the called the Four Agreements. It's by this doctor or old doctor who turned into a more shamanistic person, but his name is Don Miguel Ruiz, and he wrote a book called the Four Agreements. And I got to this book when I was like maybe 16 years old, and it was just a very life-changing book, and it was probably my first touch of like any type of like spirituality in my life. So I'm just gonna talk about him a little bit. So he's a shaman. He comes from a tradition called the Toltec, which just for like a little bit of history, they resonated in central Mexico from about like 1168 AD to 900 AD. So around that time, they were kind of known as like the Greeks of the Americas. I mean, there's a lot of like philosophical cultures back then, but that's what they were kind of known for. They're known for their artwork and their artistry and philosophy, and also there was a lot of shamans during that time. The Aztecs were actually the ones that came after them, and they took, at least that's what some people say, the Aztecs took a lot of the Toltec art and stuff and applied it to their own culture. But also, there's not a lot of like written history about the Toltecs because there was an Aztec emperor who decided to just burn a bunch of books, including Toltec books. So it's hard to find information about the Toltecs because they didn't write too much, and whatever they did write got burned by Mexican Hitler. But one guy besides Don Miguel Ruiz that really kind of like blew this up and made it into like a bigger thing, the Toltec tradition and just kind of Native American shamanism and Mexican shamanism, was Carlos Castaneda. And he wrote a bunch of books about his experience. He found this teacher named Don Juan, and this Don Juan guy kind of just like took him under his wing and showed him a bunch of crazy stuff. I read one of these books. It was called Journey to Ixtan, something like that. It's Ixtan, I'm pretty sure. And it's a pretty crazy book. I mean, there's definitely some like mysticism going on, definitely some magic going on, but it's a good book and there's a lot you can learn from. And it's also cool just to get a different perspective on how other people see the world, because he definitely has a different perspective on life, that's for sure. So, the Four Agreements. So, like I said, Don Miguel Ruiz comes from the Toltec tradition, and he was a doctor who got in a car crash, and it was a fatal car crash, but he didn't die. And so, because of that, he decided to go the more spiritual route. It has nothing to do with the parents, because they're just trying to do their best to raise you, but everyone's got their issues. So there's a quote that I'm gonna read from the book that I really like. It's called "Death is not the biggest fear we have. Our biggest fear is taking the risk to be alive. The risk to be alive and express what we really are." And that's the thing about the whole programming thing is you're not your parents. I mean, you are your parents, but the way they were raised and everything is going to be different from the way you are. And at the end of the day, you are a different human being than that person. So you're going to express yourself in different ways and you're just going to live life differently. But those rules can be a huge hindrance on you expressing yourself. And so that's kind of what the book, it's like one of the main lessons of the book is just to really learn how to get rid of some of the rules to make yourself be able to express yourself more, because like the greatest journey in life is to live your life to the fullest and be who you really are, because I mean that's why we're here. So the four agreements are: be impeccable with your words, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. And he says those are the four agreements, and if you live your life by those, you can really change your life. But the thing is, it takes a lot of hard work. Like it's easy to just read those and be like, those sound great, yeah, but to actually apply them to your life takes a lot of work. So I'm gonna jump in to the second one: don't take anything personally, because for me, that when I read this book when I was 16 years old, that was a big thing for me, where I was like, damn, like I take everything personally. Like if I called my homie and he didn't pick me up, I'd be super, or like I'd call him and he'd be like, hey, I'm gonna be there in 30 minutes. I'd be like, why weren't you ready? And I was just like, It would make myself angry, but I was making myself angry because I was taking everything personal. So what people say and do isn't a reflection of you, it's a reflection of them, you know? Like if someone's being really nasty to you, that's usually because they have some issue that they haven't dealt with and they're taking it out on you, you know? And even with me, like I realized this when I grow up, like if I see someone do something and it kind of like I get that little fire in me of like annoyance or whatever, I'm like it's a sign that there's something in that person that that person is doing that I don't like in myself, you know? Like for example, like if I see one of my friends being lazy, it can light a little fire in me. I'm like, look at that lazy little fuck. But I'm just really upset at myself for all the times that I've been lazy with myself. And whenever those things happen, just look at it as like a mirror, you know? Because there's mirrors everywhere in life. And anytime you get upset by something, that's usually because there's something in you that you don't like about yourself or you haven't dealt with. And those little like fires, I guess, that you get, or that's what I get like little fires in my body, but they're always good, like telltale signs that, hey, this is something you need to work on. So back to that whole when you're growing up, it's you follow the rules, and because of that, you kind of just like live a life that isn't truly you. Another dangerous thing about that whole aspect is if you do that your whole life and you never like do any work on it or realize your patterns, then you're gonna do the same thing to your kids and you're gonna train your kids the same exact way that you were trained, you know? Because at the end of the day, like 95% of what you do is based off habit. And if you have a habit of doing something when you have kids, it's not like you're just gonna magically change and turn into an amazing parent. You're gonna put those habits onto your kids. And then it's just gonna get passed down from generation to generation. And so it's very important to break that cycle, especially if it's like a dangerous cycle. Like I mean, not all of us know, but like alcoholism. If there's like alcoholism in the family, it can go through generation to generation. And the reason it does that is because no one is like willing to recognize the pattern and kind of deal with the pattern. They're just like living their life unconsciously almost. Not like unconsciously, but unconsciously to the patterns that kind of shape their lives. So one thing that really helps with this four agreements is knowing who you are. That is a lifelong journey, which it's hard to know who you are, especially if you're like a younger person like me. I'm 26 and it's tough, you know, trying to figure out who you are because who you are is always changing at all times. But yeah, knowing yourself deep down in the core is very important, you know, like for me, I know like I'm a nice person, you could say. So when I do something nice for someone and it's not reciprocated, I don't like get too upset about it because that's just who I am. And you know, you are who you are, and you can try to change that if you want, but it can be a lot. So one thing you kind of need to do is kind of realize like what rules or ideas make you unhappy and are based in fear, because we all have things that we do that are based in fear and that make us unhappy, you know. For example, like you want to do something crazy or exciting or you want to try something new with your life, but there's a fear of you're like, oh, I'm gonna look stupid, I'm gonna be discomfortable. Because of that, you just end up not doing the thing you're supposed to be doing, and it kind of stunts your growth, you know, because whenever you face fear, it's like a blessing, because whatever happens you're going to learn from that experience, you know, because that's for me personally, life is all about learning from my experiences, although it's not a bad idea to learn from other people too. It can save you a lot of time. All right, so the first agreement is to be impeccable with your words, and impeccability means pretty much just to do everything to the highest possible standard that you can. And so that also kind of goes with like not saying things that go against you, you know, like talking shit behind someone's back if you're a nice person, stuff like that, you know, definitely gossip. Gossip is a very big one that I mean all peoples of all whatever thing you do, like everyone knows that gossip's not a good thing. But it creates like a little when you do gossip with other people, it creates like a little circle and you guys kind of become closer together because you're like you share the story. It's like an inside joke, you know. You share the story, and because of that, you guys feel closer together. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like at a low vibration when you gossip about people, and so you're just gonna attract more low vibration energies to you. And I don't think that's something you want to do. If it is, all to you. But you know, words are very powerful. Words like the way you talk to yourself is a very powerful thing, and it's something that I'm just starting to get into more and more. Like for example, Right now it's winter time where I live, or it's about starting to become winter, and we have a river that goes through our town. Today it was 35 degrees water, and we've just been me and my friend have been jumping in the river and like doing the whole ice bath thing, but in the river, and it's been brutal. It's so cold, and it's painful. And when I'll be driving to the river after the gym, I'll be thinking in my mind like, man, I do not want to do this. I do not want to go in the river. And it's like slowly starting to create a story of like, oh, this is pain and suffering. This has to be pain and suffering. But what I started doing is instead, like when I'm driving and I start having those thoughts of like, oh man, this is gonna suck. This is painful. Like all this, that. I just start being grateful. I start being like, hey, at least I get to jump in the river. At least anytime I start getting really angry with myself, I start being grateful for the things. Like even if I'm like sitting down and I'm starting to get angry, I'm like, hey, at least you get to sit down and breathe this air, because somewhere someone can't, and it takes time, because the more you say something, it's like building a track, and you just like, the more you say it, the more you're grinding into the stone, like this path. And so trying to like reverse that is hard, but it takes time, and so I think gratitude is always a great way to go about anytime you're like feeling negative, talking down about yourself, talking down about someone else, just take a deep breath and just be grateful for a moment. Be grateful for all the things you have, because it's a very powerful thing. There's another quote in the book that I really like. It says the difference between being a warrior and a victim is that the victim represses and the warrior refrains, which is also, there's a fine line between refraining and suppression, because like when you're a dangerous person, or like say you train or you have combat experience, and someone comes up to you and starts like testing you, you know what you can do. And so because you know what you can do, there's no reason for you to prove yourself to this person. But it's different than if you're someone and you're like feeling scared, like we all feel scared at some point, but there's like there's a difference between being scared and refraining yourself. It's a fine line. So the third agreement is don't make assumptions, which pretty much means actually it's don't make assumptions. And it's funny because my sixth grade teacher used to, on our first day of class, that was the one thing. Yeah, that was the one thing that he taught us for the first day, was like, don't ever assume. Because he wrote out assume, and it's ASSUME, which if you break it up, it's ass out of you and me. So whenever you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. It's actually funny. But yeah, so from a very young age, I mean, like I said, people keep saying the same things over, and the things that keep getting said over and survive the test of time are things that are true, And don't make assumptions. Like, I know there's a lot of different groups of thoughts that say the same things, like don't make assumptions, and it's true. Like you can never judge a person till you walk a mile in their shoe, because you never know what that person is going through. I mean, they might look like an asshole, but maybe they're an asshole because of their parents or whatever. But just, and it's hard too, because like we survive off judgment, like especially back in the day, like how we survive is off judging people, like are you safe, are you dangerous. And so now a lot of us are safe now, and so that like circuit has kind of been hijacked into just like mediocre shit, like judging people that you walk by and stuff like that. And so obviously it's hard to break these things, but it helps to bring awareness. And when I mean awareness, it just means like just noticing your thoughts and just like breathing, like anytime I have a thought that I really can't get rid of, I just start breathing a lot and like start really focusing on my breath, and I just keep doing that, and it works, but sometimes it doesn't. But it's just like, because like I said, it's like the more you have that thought, the more you're like grinding into that stone, that way of thinking, and after a while, like it's hard to get rid of those things. And another thing about assuming is, if you assume about a situation, life in life, like your plans never go as they're supposed to ever. Sometimes they do, but usually not the way you do. And so when you assume, you already make a plan about the future and the present. And most likely that plan isn't going to be the way you see it. And so because of that, you're gonna You're not going to be happy with the outcome because you had this idea in your head and it didn't come out that way. And because of that, you're just going to create more unhappiness in your life. And so another thing is don't get tricked by your thoughts and your emotions, you know. You know, your thoughts can create your emotions, and a lot of your thoughts can be just bullshit. They say like what 60,000. There's like we think 60,000 thoughts in a day, and we don't even like recognize all those thoughts. You know, it's just good to be aware of your thoughts and just monitor them. You don't have to like control them per se, but you just want to monitor them and see what does what. Because I promise you, if you start looking, you'll realize that certain thoughts create certain emotions in you. Like if you think about a certain situation, you'll start getting angry about a certain thing that happened to you. That actually, I do that a lot actually. I think about old situations where I was like, damn, I should have done this, I should have done that. And then I start getting angry about it and I'm chilling in my room doing nothing and now I'm fuming because of some shit that happened like a year ago, you know? And so it's just very important to realize that your thoughts create your emotions, you know? And there's obviously intuition, and intuition is very important, and you do need to listen to your intuition. And the best way, I mean, we all have our own intuition and we all know when it's talking to us and we learn as we grow. But one thing that really helps to listen to, like, especially those thoughts that really do matter and those intuition feelings that really do matter, is to be silent, you know, to be quiet. And that doesn't mean like you need to have your mind quiet, but you just need to, the more you monitor, the more you realize what your mind is doing. And then slowly that creates the silence that you need, because when you're talking all the time you can't listen, you know. And that's like saying like me talking to other people, but that also applies to like your mind, you know. If you're always talking, you'll never be able to listen and you'll never get like lessons that people give you, because like I mean you'll just get random lessons through life, you know. And it doesn't have to be someone teaching you. Sometimes it's just a thought pops into your head and you just got a lesson. You just have to know what's real and what's fake. Okay, so there's two ways to also help without making assumptions as much. And the first one is to be clear how we communicate, especially when it comes to like relationships and stuff, because you know, like that's another human being. You can't read their mind, they can't read your mind. And so, you know, it's how they say communication is key. But it doesn't just have to be like a love relationship, but any relationship ever, you know? Like, for example, like I work at a restaurant and I communicate very well what days I want to work and how many days I want to work, you know, because nothing pisses me off more than when I get scheduled for days I didn't want to work. And so with work, I communicate a lot. You know, I communicate a lot with a lot of people, honestly. So for me, I mean, it's something I have to work on for sure. But yeah, as I was saying, the thing you want to do is communicate as much as possible to whatever thing you're assuming about, and that can clear up a little bit of the fog, because you guys are kind of starting to try to find the same level, you know. And then if you are curious about something or don't understand, just ask questions, you know. Ask questions about anything that you don't know. You should ask a question, you know, even if it seems like a stupid question, even if that person kind of like you feels like you're asking so many questions and that person like feels like it's interview or they're starting to get upset about it. It's like you're just trying to make a clear intention and try to figure out what's going on. When you come from a good place, you can still do wrong things, I guess, but when you come from a good place, it's the intention that matters, you know. So if you come from a good place, usually that'll help. And even if it doesn't work out, at least you came from a good intention, because it's all about intention at the end of the day. And the fourth agreement is to always do your best. Sounds pretty simple, right? Just always do your best. But there's definitely nuances to this agreement. And yes, you should always do your best, but your best isn't the same every single day, you know? And like a big thing for me is when I get sick, I'll still continue to work out. And a lot of people are like, yeah, yeah, do that, you know, like just push through it. But a lot of times when I push through it, it just makes me sicker, you know, because your body, when you get sick, your body's pretty much at war with a germ or bacteria or something like that. And so your body needs to use all its resources to fight that thing. And if you go work out, well, now your body's using resources to lift muscles and to do all that stuff, which is actually takes a lot of energy. I used to be, as I get older, I start getting more like I listen to my body. But that being said, that's also like an easy way to kind of be lazy, and you shouldn't be lazy. Like You should clean your car. If your car's dirty, you should clean your car. If your room's dirty, you should clean your room, you know? And you shouldn't just like go to work and be a good worker at work and then come home to your house and be like, fuck it, I'm done. And just like chill. I mean, you can chill a little bit for sure, but like you want to you want to live your life impeccably to the highest standard, you know? You want to like just like, you know, like clean your toilet, clean your mirrors, you know, just make sure everything's clean and then always take the extra step, you know, like you got to take out the trash, you know. Do all like those little things cuz at the end of the day those little things are the things that are going to add up to like make the difference in your life. And so this is for my more crazy people who are like perfectionists, I guess you could say. Perfectionism is not the same as striving to be our best. Perfectionism is different than self-improvement. Perfectionism is like it's an ideal, you know. And ideals are great, but ideals sometimes can be not very realistic. And so nothing in this world is perfect. Actually, I take that back. The universe is perfect the way it is, but it's a perfect imperfection, you know. That's how it's perfect. Is because it's perfectly imperfect, you know, which is kind of funny. You want to do your best, but you strive for perfection. When you do it, you get like maybe 99% of the way, and that's good, you know. Like you strived for the best and you got what you came for, you know. It's like shoot for the moon and you might land on a star. It's kind of like that theory, you know, like when you strive for perfectionism and like when you strive for perfectionism and you're attached to that perfectionism, like this has to be perfect. That's when it gets dangerous because you will never succeed your like your drive, you know, which for some people can be good because like honestly like if you want to be the best at something you need to have like that perfectionist mindset of just like grinding every single day no matter what. But that type of life, I mean, I've never lived that life so I can't tell, but from what I know, that's a very unhappy type of life, you know. Like you're not very happy with the way you live, you know. That's why you're always striving for something else, and like there's no greater time than now, you know, this moment. So you should enjoy it, you know. And if you're always trying to perfect something, you're most likely not going to enjoy this moment. So it's two-sided for sure, you know. Like everything in life is two-sided, but I just wanted to throw that out there, you know. And so I'm just going to finish this video off with just a nice simple thing. You know, life is a long journey of learning. I think that's why we're here as human beings, or most of us, is to learn something, you know, like our souls need to learn something from this life and just to continue to get better as whatever we are. But just like, you know, all this stuff, all this like self help stuff is great. Like I'm all about it. I do it all the time, but you also just it can make you become serious and bitter towards other people who aren't doing the thing, and that's not the point. If you're doing that, you're missing the point. And so I just want to say like don't take life too seriously. Enjoy it. Laugh with your friends. Go hang out with your friends and have a good time, you know. Thank you for watching this video. Doses.